Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
What is up? What is up? Welcome to Lombardi's Legends Podcast. That's Dane, it's Wags, it's draft night. Wags, what's up? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. And Dane, what better than to grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and watch a little NFL draft that's taking place in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as we speak. I couldn't be more excited. Probably will not be on until the Packers pick here tonight, unless they trade up pretty far. We're talking live, and I think the Bears are about to make their selection or just did, and so kind of in the early middle part of the first round of the draft. But excited to jump on as some of these picks come off the board and just talk a little bit about what positions the Packers we think we're likely to target whenever their pick comes up here at number 23 later this evening. So, Dane, how are you doing, though, man? It's always good to jump on and talk Packers with you.
Wags, I'm doing great. I'm off work tomorrow, so I'm having a Fox River Brewing Company Green Bay draft on the clock special IPA, which is pretty perfect here. Excited to, as always, to talk first round pick here with you. It's a great day to be a Packer fan. The Bears pick, it says it's in, so we'll announce it as soon as we see what they say here. But I'm doing awesome, man, and it looks like everybody's having a great time in Green Bay. It's a lot of folks. Pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dane, maybe as we get uploaded here with the Bears pick here momentarily, for those of you that aren't lucky enough, maybe you're at work, you're kind of jumping on our Facebook or YouTube live here and listening in with an earpiece and aren't able to watch the draft live or listen on the radio somehow. Just giving a quick rundown. Cam Ward, as expected, number one pick overall to the Tennessee Titans. A big trade. The Browns traded out of the number 2 slot. Jaguars gave up a bunch, I think, to move up 3 spots, but they wanted Travis Hunter. They got their guy. So Travis Hunter, as expected, goes number 2, but it's the Jaguars who traded up to select him. And then after that, the Giants took Abdul Carter as a pass rusher, number 3. And then the Patriots selected offensive tackle from LSU, Will Campbell. At number 5, the Browns, who had traded down, ended up taking the big defensive tackle, Mason Graham from Michigan. Ashton Jeanty goes to the Raiders at number 6. So I'm just going to pause there. Dane, any surprises from your vantage point in the top 6 picks at all? I know we didn't expect any of those guys, obviously, to be in play for the Packers or for the Packers to jump all the way up this high in the draft. But just curious if there was any surprises or any thoughts that you had over those top 6 selections.
No surprises, Wags. And as I'm saying this, Goodell is on the stage. So the Bears are taking they're doing a Steve McMichael tribute, passed away today, a great Chicago Bear. As much as I dislike the Bears, I have to give him respect.
With respect to him, I don't know if folks I all saw it out there, but I saw Clay Matthews is in Green Bay and did a little bit earlier tonight saying that President Trump had sent a memo to all 32 teams, opened up the letter, and just shouted that the Bears still suck. So I think that is relevant to this moment, with all respect to McMichael. It's the Bears we're talking about. So, Dane, be ready to jump in here anytime when the Bears make their selection. But at number 7, the Jets took the other big offensive tackle expected to go in the top 10, Armand Membo out of Missouri. And then maybe not a big surprise, but maybe a slight surprise. Tedoroa McMillan, T-Mac went at number 8 to the Panthers. There were some folks that thought there's a possibility, however slight, that he might slide a little bit, or if the Packers want to trade up for McMillan. But Panthers take him at number 8 overall. And that is where we stand until the Bears make their selection here momentarily. So, Dane, I don't know if you have thoughts on
the pick is in, Wags. It's Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan.
Wow. Okay. So he goes before Warren, but I know there's a lot of folks out there that like Loveland actually as tight end 1 in this draft. So the Bears take another offensive player. So I don't know if you have any immediate thoughts to that. I know Loveland is a guy a lot of people really liked. I'm a little bit surprised though that the Bears wanted a tight end and let alone an offensive player with the top 10 pick. It seemed like they may have had some other needs, but clearly they thought that he was a premier player. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that selection, Dane.
I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, certainly not a Bears fan or expert, but we face them a couple times a year, and it makes it. It definitely rounds out their offense a little bit more, right? I mean, it's something where new head coach is coming in who likes to have a lot of weapons offensively. I suppose I'm not totally surprised. They're also going into year 2 with their quarterback that they spent a lot of draft capital on. Why not go get him a big target, another weapon? He's a guy who this tight end's very athletic. He's a guy that can play inside. He can split out. So he's a good football player. I agree, Wags. The kid from Penn State was also definitely up there. I know with a lot of folks, it's one of those scenarios where it's like, which guy is the right guy? Are both the right guy? Maybe neither are the right guy. The NFL draft is sometimes a science, but not really a science. So not a bad pick, right? There's not a lot of bad picks, I'd argue, in the top 10 where the Bears were picking because they're just a terrible franchise. But, he's a talented guy coming out of college.
Dan, I'll tell you what, I don't pretend, and we've stopped doing as much pre-draft coverage because I really don't pretend to be an expert in the draft. I really follow the Packers very closely, but not as much college football. So there's plenty of folks out there that are true draft nicks. That said, I watched both of these guys. They've been playing in Big Ten. I'm kind of glad they didn't take Tyler Warren. He's a guy that you hate to play against, and is just a gritty player. I think he can do a lot of things, and he would have been a big pain to have to face a couple of times a year. And honestly, kind of a prototypical, just hard-nosed Bears type player. So all respect to Colston Loveland. As you said, all of those things may be true, and certainly is number 1 tight end on a lot of other folks' board as well. But I would have hated the Tyler Warren pick had they gone that direction. I think a little bit more. So I don't mind this overall, considering what they could have taken there.
No, that's good to hear. Warren's definitely I'm watching the classic draft coverage, and Warren is the best player available, period. They're saying right now still. So again, who knows, but I agree. I mean, I watched both of them a little bit just with the Badgers, right? You kind of see these guys here and there. They're both good players, but I think Warren probably does a little bit more. He's a little bit feistier, a little bit nastier. At least that was my initial impression. They are different players for sure too.
All right, Dane, let's talk Packers here. There's gonna be maybe a few minutes before the next pick is in, and we're not really here to talk position pick by pick or who other teams are taking. Let's just start with overall positions that you think most likely the Packers are going to target a player in round 1. Consensus seems to be cornerback, wide receiver, and either edge or defensive tackle, somewhere along the defensive line. Do you align with that consensus? I know that the big offensive tackle from Ohio State did get a top 30 visit to Green Bay, but in general, would you expect that those first 3 positions maybe where we should expect the Packers to target someone here in round one?
I mean, I think I'd be surprised if it wasn't, and I would actually even remove edge from it. The more I've thought about it, I think that they're invested enough in Lucas Van Ness still. They've got enough different guys and pieces to work with. Brenton Cox showed a lot of promise. That's not to say the Packers don't invest in an edge early, right? Like potentially a day two. But the more I've thought about it, I think it probably comes down to defensive tackle or cornerback, with the dark horse being wide receiver. And I have nothing against them if they take a wide out. I know a lot of fans will love it. I don't care about the past history so much. I think they need to add to the position. That being said, Packers defensive tackle, something I've thought a lot about, Wags. And, TJ Slayton no longer being in Green Bay. I mean, he took about 40% of the snaps last year. The Packers rotate defensive linemen pretty regularly in this defense. And we saw a lot of promise. We saw some really good showing last year of stopping the run. I thought it was the best run stopping Packers defense we've had in a very, very long time. And, losing Slayton definitely hurts there. But I just think bigger picture, that position group, Kenny Clark on his third contract had un-Kenny Clark type season. I didn't think he was, as impactful last year as he's been in previous years. Devontae Wyatt going into his 5th year contract, good, I think, getting better when he's on the field, but he has not been that like first round pick. Boom, this is the guy, right? He's been good in spots, but dealt with some injuries last year. I'm probably highest on Carl Brooks out of anybody on the defensive line. I think that he's the most consistent splash play kind of guy along that defensive line. It seems like every week or close to every week, he does something, right? He does some kind of reroute. He gets to the quarterback. He gets in the quarterback's face. Obviously, everybody knows the blocked field goal, but he does so much more along the defensive line. So I really like Carl Brooks. But Wags, after those three, we look at Colby Wooden, who, got some touches here and there, got some snaps. Then we're looking at some other guys from practice squad or what have you. So I think the defensive tackle position in particular could be something where if they land an impact player early, or they think that they have a guy that can really, really make plays, defensive tackle makes a lot of sense. I do think they go high with the defensive tackle spot, whether it's in the first round, second round, or potentially third round. But I do think that they're looking to add another guy and another disruptive player. Edge would be cool, but I also understand there's other ways to, attack the quarterback, right? And if you can get another guy in there to plug in to attack the quarterback, but also help stop the run, it makes that defense that much better. They've invested a lot in young talent there, but just my gut tells me initially, without knowing how the board's going to fall in the next 10 or 15 picks, defensive tackle seems like something they would really, really want to prioritize this year.
Yeah, Dane, I agree with you. And I think certainly when you think about Devontae Wyatt, I at this point, I don't think that they're going to pick up that 5th year option. And I think you could say the same for Quay Walker. The price tag for those 5th year options on a first round pick are pretty significant. Doesn't mean that if both those guys come back, have a good year, and stay relatively healthy, that the Packers don't consider re-signing them.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I just don't think that there's enough that they've proven that they've earned the opportunity for the Packers to pick up that 5th year option.
I would
at the cost.
I'm sorry. I agree. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. Another pick's in the 49ers. They've taken Michael Williams, the edge rusher. Really good edge rusher. So not a surprise. Did not expect him to be on the board, but another edge is gone at the position. The Packers love Georgia players over the last few years defensively, and the Georgia edge rusher is off the board now. So sorry to interrupt, but I think that's important.
No, I appreciate, and I saw that too. And I was going to mention that, but yeah, I agree. I don't think that realistically, I mean, he's obviously Williams is someone that on some draft boards could have potentially been there for the Packers at 23, but generally speaking, seemed like a guy that was likely to go on the top 15. And we've seen this over the last number of years, where premium positions, and edge is definitely one of the top 2 or 3 premium positions that tends to get a little bit of a run on players sometimes. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that position. And Dane, just my overall thought, I actually think the Packers might take a wide receiver.
Really?
I think wide receiver and defensive line are the 2 position groups that I think are most likely. I actually don't think they're going to take a cornerback in the first round. I won't be shocked if they do, but we've talked about this in the past. There tends to be some things to pay attention to with their pre-draft visits, and the Packers usually do not bring in guys that they don't seriously consider worthy of selections around where they tend to be sort of projected. They bought in 3 defensive linemen. They bought in 3 receivers. They didn't bring in any cornerbacks that are projected to go in round 1.
That's
so
good insight.
now we've seen over the years, does that mean that the Packers don't take some corner that everyone thinks is a mid-second round pick at number 23? That's entirely possible. They've got kind of their own process. I respect it, but I would just say that that seems to be a little bit of a tendency to pay attention to. Now they bring in guys that could be all over the draft. They've got guys that maybe are going to be round 3, round 4, round 5 type guys too that they bring in. But generally speaking, that's one tendency to pay attention to. Another tendency is when they have position groups that, yes, they all talk about, we're going to take the best player available, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can still do that. But usually what they're doing with their pre-draft visits is position groups that they are putting a premium on early in the draft. They also bring in other guys that are projected to go later because they're going to double up. So I think it tends to show up over the years that position groups that they bring in multiple players that are projected to go in the first or second round, and then maybe another couple of players that are projected to go later in the draft. They tend to double up at that position, and they usually do go ahead and take a player from that position group, if not in the first round, usually in the second round, and definitely by round 3. So I would say that if I had to bank on it, there's a decent chance that the Packers go wide receiver, but we'll have to see. It's a long way still, even though these picks are coming off the board pretty quickly. It's still a long ways to go, and a lot of players can fall off the board that the Packers might like.
And speaking of players coming off the board, Wags, Booker, the guard from Alabama, is off the board, and he is with Dallas Cowboys drafted Booker. Really good player, but Wags, when the Packers invested in guard in the free agency, I think that said everything we needed to know about their priorities. I think along the offensive line, they drafted a first round offensive lineman last year in Jordan Morgan, who competed for guard. They're saying he can compete at tackle this year. They've got Rasheed Walker. They've got Zach. I mean, I don't think they're going offensive line first round, right? So Booker going off the board, I think, is music to my ears because it's a position group that the Packers, I don't think realistically would go for at pick 23.
Yeah, probably makes sense for the Cowboys. They need to add some protection. If you're going to pay, if you're going to pay, I'm sorry, their quarterback big money, then that's certainly money well spent, or picks well spent to protect him. So, all right, Dane, let me ask you this next question. What are the chances the Packers trade out of the number 23 pick? I know reports are a lot of teams are looking to trade back out of the latter half of the first round. So that would be kind of an MO that the Packers have done more so under Ted Thompson, quite honestly, than Goody. But if there's a bunch of teams that are trying to trade out of their first round pick and trade back and pick up additional picks, maybe there's not quite as much value. So do you think that there's a possibility the Packers zag and instead of a trade back, maybe they trade up if there's a guy that they really like and there seems to be value in doing so? So what say you? Are they standing pat here at number 23 tonight, or do you think there's a equal chance that they could trade up or down?
Yeah, I think that if I were betting on this, I would say there's about a 70% chance the Packers just stay at 23. That I don't really have any. It's just a gut feeling at this point. I don't really buy too much into Packers, Green Bay hosting the draft, so the Packers wouldn't trade down. I don't think Goody gives a rip about any of that. I think that he's looking to make the team better. So I think that. I could definitely see the Packers trading back, especially here in the back end of that round one. And I would argue anything once you hit 22, 23, that's the kind of the beginning of the back, the back, right? These are playoff teams at that point. With not a lot of quarterbacks going high, I could definitely see a couple teams that don't want to wait until early round 2 to go get a young quarterback. So that's where I think some of these teams, and you mentioned a bunch of them, but the Packers are definitely in that group where there could definitely be some interest in teams trading up from the second round back into the first round to go and get their quarterback, whoever it may be, and kind of get the scoop on some of the other teams. So I could definitely see the Packers trading back, especially if there's good value there. Goody loves to stockpile picks, but he also is very aggressive, I feel like, in trading. We've seen him trade up. We've seen him trade down. We've seen him trade all around. The same token, Wags, if there's somebody out there that Goody just the scouting team and everybody agrees is the guy, and they're sitting out there, I mean, we're already getting to the teens, right, of the draft. So pretty quickly, maybe the Packers do package something and move up. The other thing we haven't even talked about yet, I can't believe we haven't mentioned it, is Jair Alexander. There's a possibility he goes at some point this weekend, whether it's today or tomorrow, or of course, even Saturday. So could that also be a piece to all of this? I don't know. But I do think the Packers are actively, it seems, still trying to unload Jair Alexander. So that adds to the mix. So for all that to say, I think realistically, big picture, I think it's more likely than not the Packers stay still. But I could see them move either way. I think the Packers this year have really held their cards pretty good, close to their vest too. I don't think that really anything's tipped very well, but I would say that over the years, as you mentioned, I think really astutely, those 30 visits, those top 30 visits that every team are allotted, I think the Packers, I don't know what the percentage is, but I think the Packers are one of the higher percentage teams. Is if they come to Green Bay for some kind of look, there's a decent chance that those guys end up in Green Bay, whether they're a first round pick, whether a 6th round pick, whether they're undrafted. The Packers really do like to utilize those visits and identify the guys that they want to bring into Green Bay. So with you saying that about the cornerback position, I mean, that could be a real possibility. And I'll tell you what, I would not be upset. I am curious about this for you too. I wouldn't be upset with wide receiver this year. We're talking about what we think the Packers could do. Would you be comfortable with the Packers, Wags, taking a wide receiver here in the first round if it's a guy that they think could be a difference maker?
Yeah, I think it depends on who it is, to be honest with you. I really like a couple of guys that could, I say emphasis on could, be available. And I know that everybody kind of likes their guys, right? When you're looking at the draft process. But I think Matthew Golden out of Texas is a guy that if he's in the range that the Packers could maybe move up and snag him if they really like him. Makes a lot of sense. Is a lot of motion in Texas's offensive scheme. So I think if you paired a guy like him with some of the weapons that we have and Dobbs kind of on the outside and obviously Jaden Reed is someone that they like to put in motion an awful lot at Matthew LaFleur's offense. So a really good fit there. Plus he's a kick returner and it has been a very successful kick returner at the college level. We know the Packers are going to be looking for a guy to fill that need. Despite all of the changes to the kick return rules, you need someone back there that can do that job. So dual threat in that respect. So he's a guy that I would certainly be keeping an eye on. And then the kid out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka, he also was bought in for a pre-draft visit. Both of those guys were. I think what can you say when you look at the lineage of Ohio State wide receivers over the last 5 to 7 years, and he's just another one in a long line, maybe not the most talented guy in the group of receivers that have come out of OSU in the last few years. But listen, just a very high character player, first of all, super hard worker, very talented, great hands, and by all accounts, a really strong route runner. So I think in a lot of respects, those are two guys that I would really be pleased to see. I'd be, the kid out of Missouri has a lot of potential, a little bit of a down year this last year. I'm not quite as high as him on Luther Burden III, but I need to go back and probably watch a little bit more tape on him. But listen, the Packers have a pretty good track record of drafting a wide receiver. So at the end of the day, if there's a guy there that Goody and this front office really like, I've got a lot of confidence that their track record of drafting at this position group is strong enough that I'm going to get behind whoever they take if they do indeed go in that direction.
That's great insight. And Wags, defensive tackle is off the board. Kenneth Grant, the big dog from Michigan, big guy, does a little bit of everything. Miami Dolphins just took him at 13. The Colts are on the clock.
Dane, I'm just going to interject here. Do you find it interesting how many players in the trenches have been drafted so far early in the first half of this draft? We've got one quarterback taken so far, and by my count, that's either 8 or 9 players that play on the offensive or defensive line, and we've not even gotten to the halfway point of first round. I mean, this is a league of copycats. We saw what the Eagles were able to do in the Super Bowl. It seems like everyone's trying to build through the trenches, and look, that's a pretty good strategy overall. But that means that there are guys at other premium position groups, cornerback and wide receiver among them, that could be available. And call me crazy, but the further he falls, the guy we talked about earlier for the Bears, Tyler Warren, I think there's a long way to go, but any chance the Packers would want another tight end?
Now, Wags, you say it, and our boy O'Malley is going to be very happy. Tyler Warren just got drafted by the Colts.
Oh, all right. A Penn State and Colts fan, and he gets his guy. This is like a fantasy draft, if that just happened, Dan. Yep. But
yep, O'Malley's got to be losing his mind right now.
All right. So anyway, that probably was a long shot, I admit, but I just wanted to throw that out there. What would have the reaction been? But I guess it's a moot point now. So.
Well, but to your point, I mean, yeah, maybe not tight end, maybe not that role, but going back to the wide receiver position, it is a position of, I think, pretty real need for Green Bay, both in the immediate and certainly in the future with the way the contracts are shaking out. And, you say zig when other teams zag, right? And I would argue the offensive line for Green Bay, and I wouldn't even argue. I think the offensive line, the top 6 for the offensive line right now in Green Bay, we've got an offensive line good enough to get it done. Right. Like, and win playoff games and do the whole thing. Defensive line, I outlined it earlier. I think we've got a lot of good pieces. We need to make another add-on. Do we absolutely have to make that addition in the first round? I don't think so. It'd be great. Of course, you want to have that guy, but I don't think we need to do it immediately. Although I do think it's a second or third round thing then, if it's not a first round thing. Cornerback, I think it's a little precarious. We don't know what the heck's going to go on with Jair Alexander. I do not expect Jair Alexander back in Green Bay, though. Personally, I just don't see it happening. So then we're relying on Hobbs, who we just signed, free agent from Las Vegas, who played primarily in the slot. But then we also have Bullard, who, our safety for a second round pick last year, who played primarily in the slot last year. We've got Keyshawn Nixon on one side of things. We've got Carrington Valentine on the other side of things. This is a position group that they need more bodies in. I think they need more competition in. So just, respectfully to everybody there, like, we need another guy there, and we need a guy there sooner rather than later. We don't need a 4th or 5th round project at cornerback. I think we need somebody that we can expect to get snaps in day one. But at the same token, Wags, wide receiver, Christian Watson's he's not going to play much this year, or if he does play a lot, that's a nasty injury. I don't expect him to bounce back and be just back at it in week 6, right? Even if he does come back by week 6, week 7, it's going to be a process to get him back on the field. Romeo Dobbs didn't play a game last year, was disgruntled, has had now some head injuries, which is very, very concerning as a human being, first of all, but also, right, as a football player. Dontavian Wicks, I think we both really like Dontavian Wicks, but is he wide receiver 1? No, he's not right now. Jaden Reed, we both really like. You love Jaden Reed. I really like him a ton. But we need another field stretcher, right? We need somebody that can stretch the field, that can go down there and make the big plays. Christian Watson's not going to be that guy anytime soon. We signed Mecole Hardman, but again, that's not enough. I don't think. We need to add bodies. We need to add a young talented receiver. So all that's to say, the way the draft is shaping up right now, we're going into pick 15. I don't know, frankly, what the Atlanta Falcons' needs are. But what I do know is that they recently drafted. Yeah, right. So I don't think they're going wide receiver. So all of a sudden we get to 16, 17, 18. We're getting precariously close, Wags, to some real talent at wide receiver still on the board. So, buckle up. And Kevin, our boy Kevin, hey, man, says, get me a bourbon. Let's go. Let's go. Because, I do think that there could be some real possibilities of wideout all of a sudden.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're still eight picks away from Packers, and all it takes is 2 teams to select wide receivers before we go, and all of a sudden, both of the guys I mentioned could be off the board. So, we'll have to see. I think, Dane, one other thing that I was going to mention too is when you look at where the talent is on the defensive line, I think it's going to be interesting to see. They made a position coach change, brought in DeMarcus Covington. He spent a number of years with the Patriots, was their defensive coordinator last year. He's had some success by all accounts. And I frankly, we came into last season thinking that there was more talent on this defensive line than Packers have had in a number of years. And it showed at times, but just not consistently enough. You mentioned the run defense was better than it's been in a long time. I think a lot of that is credit to the scheme change and defense coordinator Jeff Halfway, really plugging some things up in the scheme, and that helps a lot. But you need the players, and I don't know what's going to happen with Kenny Clark. He certainly isn't going to get a premium contract if they bring him back after next season. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we mentioned Devontae Wyatt. If they decline the 5th-year option, which I would be pretty surprised if they pick that up, he'll also be a restricted free agent after next year. So there could be a theme here where you may want to get ahead of things, get a guy in there that may have some talent. And as you said, they also have a need with TJ Slayton moving on as well. So it wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, I'm really interested to see what that position coach change does for this group of players, and does that result in some of the the guys that we still feel have a lot of talent, maybe maximizing that and producing at a higher level this season as well. So it's remains to be seen, but I still have faith that there is quite a bit of talent on this defensive line and in this edge position group for the Packers. And maybe there's the best days are ahead for some of these guys as well. And it's not as dire of a need as what we're thinking right now.
I hope so. I mean, I definitely thought that these guys got more and more comfortable as the season wore on. You could tell they started to settle in a little bit after a few weeks defensively. I thought, we were talking D-line, but I'll Quay Walker, I thought, played probably the best football of his entire career in Green Bay in some stretches for the Packers last year. We saw Cooper, come on as well. And, I think that was an extension of some of the good defensive line play. But you're right. I mean, wasn't consistent enough. I thought the defensive line in particular, we talk edge rush, and that's a real thing too with getting pressure. But again, there's a lot of ways to get pressure, and it's not just always off the edge. There's also a lot of work that can be done inside. And I did think that at times we saw some real high intensity games where, they could smell blood in the water and they were just getting after quarterbacks. And then there were some games where, man, it was like they were hitting a brick wall, and we had some real struggles there. So it remains to be seen how early the Packers address this need. But I understand the want and need for another edge rusher. But after the investments the Packers have done, I think I might even say the interior defensive line might be the most glaring need of like a day one need. Was probably defensive line, potentially cornerbacks shortly behind there, but wide receivers in that mix too. So I keep coming back to those are kind of the big three. And then everything else is kind of like a secondary need, which, hey, there's worse places to be right than that. But I think that there are probably three positional needs in particular that the Packers need. And Wags, we've got Goodell walking on the stage right now. He's about to pick. They took Jalen Walker, that linebacker from Georgia. So all of the Packers' favorite Georgia players are off the books. I did not expect the Packers to go linebacker in round one. So a pick off the board that I don't think impacts the Packers other than positively.
Yeah, for sure. So I think let's just take stock here. After 15 picks, some of the players that could be available still, obviously still 7 more selections before the Packers will be on the clock. But just looking across some of the position groups that the Packers might have some interest in, wide receiver. We've only got one wide receiver off the board so far. Teteroa McMillan was taken by the Panthers at 8 overall. So any other wide receiver that you may like is available at this point, including a couple of the guys that I mentioned, Dane. And then at offensive tackle, I really think this is probably, I agree with you. I'd be surprised if the Packers took tackle, but they did have Josh Simmons, the left tackle from Ohio State, in for a pre-draft visit. So they gave him a look. So worth keeping in mind and taking into consideration. And then on the defensive side of things, a guy a lot of people really like, just from a measurable standpoint. Goody loves his RAS scores. Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M is a guy I think to keep an eye on. Productivity from the sack totals was pretty low in college. So I think certainly it is something that would get a lot of scrutiny. But James Pierce Jr. is another guy that from Tennessee that I believe the Packers had in for a pre-draft visit. And then Derek Harmon on the defensive line, a kid out of Oregon, I think has been linked to the Packers potentially if he's still there on the board, as well as Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss is another guy the Packers had in for a pre-draft visit. So I think just overall, I just named a bunch of guys. And then at the cornerback position, Will Hunter was I'm sorry, Will Johnson. I said
Yeah,
Will
Will
Hunter,
Johnson.
Travis Hunter. Will Johnson out of Michigan started this. A lot of people thought potentially even a top 5 pick. Injury concerns have caused him to slide quite a bit and continue to slide. Talent wise, certainly would give you a lot to get excited about. I personally am a little bit nervous about taking guys that has injury concerns in round 1, especially at that position. But Maxwell Hairston, the kid that ran the 4.28
From
out of
Kentucky.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
is another athletic freak, obviously, that's been linked to the Packers as well. A lot of mock drafts from draft experts had Maxwell Hairston potentially going to the Packers at the cornerback position. So, and then, of course, there's the 50-50 wild card of Goody taking no one from any of those players that I just mentioned, because that's kind of what Goody and the Packers do. So I keep that in mind too. And maybe if you're a betting man, I would go with the field bet of no one that I just mentioned is probably the safest pick. So, but Dane, I don't know how much longer we're going to go here. If you've got any additional thoughts, I think we maybe have another pick or two coming in. But
Cardinals pick. It says the Cardinals pick is in. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll mention that as soon as they come out. But Wags, I'm curious. One thing I did want to ask you about. So we're talking a lot about like the most glaring needs and maybe a couple position groups where like not as much. Are there any sneaky needs on this Green Bay Packer team outside of kind of the big three position groups or so? That, are there any position groups or any places where you could see the Packers? And I'm not saying it's a day-to-day thing, right? Or even maybe a tomorrow thing, but could you see a position group where the Packers are looking to just upgrade?
Yeah, I love that question. One of them I was thinking about was linebacker. We talk about, that's a position and group that clearly Coach Halfway has a lot of value, puts a lot of value in. And while I like the 3 guys, obviously Cooper, I think, could be a star. We saw what he was doing last year. I really like Isaiah McDuffie. But, I don't think they would hesitate to potentially bring in someone that would compete or potentially elevate the interior of that linebacker group. And this isn't, like you said, this isn't a round 1 or maybe probably even a round 2 pick, but I think the linebacker position is one to look out for. Quay Walker has had a lot of injuries in his career. He's been a little bit inconsistent. I think in the second half of last year, before he got hurt, things started to finally click again, where we were seeing a guy that we would hope to see in Quay Walker. He isn't thinking too much on the field. But I think the jury is still out a little bit, both from a health and a mental concern, is if Quay Walker can consistently play at the level that they would want to. And quite honestly, can he consistently play at the level that the Packers are going to be willing to invest in giving him a second contract? So that is a sneaky position that I would be looking at is linebacker for me, Dane. But what about you? Is there any other positions that would be maybe a little bit sneakier in your mind?
Yeah, and I'll answer that in a second. Not the Packers. The Cardinals just took Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss, so another defensive tackle off the board.
So he was the guy that I just mentioned that the Packers had in for the pre-draft visit. So
yeah,
one of the guys that was linked to the Packers at that position group is gone now. So go ahead and answer that. And then I actually have one more follow-up question for you as well.
Yeah, no, sounds good. This is a deep position group, according to draft experts, which I don't think either one of us are. They're saying the defensive tackle position group is fairly deep. But as far as sneaky position group for the Packers, I'm going to go on the offensive side. I think I'll say tight end. And that might surprise folks with how good Tucker Kraft has been. And the Packers have used, some higher picks at that position, I guess, over the last couple of years. But I'll tell you why. Tucker Kraft is a budding star, I think, in the league. No doubt about it. He's an impact player. He blocks, he catches, he does all that stuff. After that, though, Musgrave, I think that we both really like Luke Musgrave, and we want to see him, we want to see him on the field, but he's had some injury issues. In both his first 2 seasons here, really last year, we lost him for most of the season. He had already, even before the injury, Wags, Tucker Kraft had bypassed him on the depth chart. It was pretty clear that Tucker Kraft week 1 of last year was going to get the Lions share of the snaps because they like the blocking ability that Tucker has, and Musgrave was going to become kind of a tight end 2 here. And I think the injury bug, he hasn't really been able to get a rhythm. This is an offense where I think the Packers ideally would like to have a couple tight ends on the field more often, and Musgrave's inability to stay on the field, it's frustrating, but it's I think a bit of a reality. Then after that, Ben Sims was a healthy scratch late in the year. Ben Sims then, in the playoff game was a healthy scratch and just wasn't on the field much. And the Packers just provided John Fitzpatrick with higher than a minimum salary. The Packers brought him back, but Fitzpatrick came in. He was a late signing by the Packers partway through the season, and he played some snaps, but he was also a healthy scratch throughout the year as well. It was almost like the Packers were trying to figure out which tight end 3 was going to be the most impactful in a positive way, throughout the year. And I think they kind of settled on that. Tyler Davis, no longer in Green Bay, unfortunately, after a couple real serious injuries that I think kind of decimated his career largely here in Green Bay. So Wags, there's other guys on the roster. Our buddy Messiah, who was on the pod last year, 6'4" or 6'5", big rangy tight end. They've got some other tight ends, but that being said, Wags, if Tucker Kraft were to go down, or it would, God forbid, right? But if something were to happen or he's limited even, all of a sudden this tight end room gets thin really, really quickly. And Luke Musgrave, I don't think has all the confidence from this coaching staff yet. So sneaky position, again, not a round 1 position at tight end. Although that Colts tight end, if he would have fallen, he's coming to Green Bay probably. But that being said, I wouldn't be totally surprised. My jaw doesn't drop if the Packers take a 4th round tight end or something.
Yeah,
like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're going to bolster most of these positions with depth, so that goes without saying. But I agree with what you're saying. I'm going to mention one other position group that came to my mind, and that's running back. Obviously, they've got Josh Jacobs, but Marshawn Lloyd, they liked him, invested a high pick on him last year. But what do we have? He wasn't able to even get on the field for 1 game last year. So. So that's a real question mark to me. I like some of the other players that the Packers have on the roster. Certainly really like what Chris Brooks was able to step in and do last year. Certainly, you look at Emmanuel Wilson, I think has been a really, really good contributor, so they can get by. But I would not be shocked to see them bring in another body or 2 through the draft in that running back group as well.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson are different backs, but both of them can put their shoulder down and be pretty aggressive. Chris Brooks, I thought Wags really was able to offer his ability as kind of that 3rd down back at certain points. But what they don't have, because we don't really know what Marshawn's able to do yet, but I don't think we have is kind of that burner, right? We don't have that smaller back, like that Aaron Jones style back, right? Like smaller in stature. It's going to make a guy miss and take off for 80. I mean, Josh Jacobs can do anything, but you get what I'm getting at, right? So I actually totally respect and hear what you're saying there. And actually it's funny because I was thinking, it's a deep position group, because in theory it is, but they don't have that guy right now that maybe mixes it up, that can be kind of the home run threat necessarily in the backfield outside of Josh Jacobs. So potentially, especially as we get deeper in the draft, running back, if they can find somebody, and that is a position group where you don't necessarily have to pick at a premier spot to get a guy who's super talented. I go back to Aaron Jones. He was a 5th round pick. So this is a position where you can find a guy later in the draft that can just completely flip the field for you.
All right, Dane. So as things stand now, we've got a lot of guys on the defensive line just keep coming off the board. So that was one of your positions that you felt like the Packers really should be fans should really be paying attention to. Um, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction before we sign off, because I don't know if we're going to make it all the way to this pick. Doesn't look like we will. Who do you think the Packers take? If you had to pick one guy, and you can name someone different than someone from the group that I mentioned. Do you want me to run through a few more names again?
I'm pulling it up right now. I'm going to pull up the list. And Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, is off the board. He was one of the guys that I saw some mock drafts had him. He was wearing an all green suit today, so there was some major excitement about that because he's kind of an animal, rushing the quarterback. But Shamar Stewart off the board. So you're asking me to pick one player, any player.
Yeah. So a bunch of the guys just in succession that I mentioned about 5-6 minutes ago. Shamar Stewart, I mentioned high athletic RAS score, low productivity in terms of actual number of sacks. Walter Nolan on the defensive line is the pick before him. The Falcons took Jalen Walker, who I think you're absolutely right is kind of in between. Maybe if the Packers were still in a 3-4, he would have been someone they would have been looking at if he would have slid down to them. But still, someone that projects to be on the defensive line. Kenneth Grant was someone that I really liked, but not surprised that he was taken before 23 on the defensive line before that. So you just go on and on down this list. And it's number 11, Michael Williams, someone that, again, didn't necessarily think would be there at 23, but maybe if he would have been there at 20, the Packers move up a few spots and take someone of his ilk. Just tons of defensive line / edge guys that are coming off the board here in the middle part of this first round. But Dane, does that mean it's corner? Is that going to be the position that the Packers take someone, or are you going to make a different prediction here?
Well, I'll tell you what, if I have to pick one player, and that's still on the board right now, as the Seattle's picking 18 shortly, I actually still stay defensive line, even after all of that. And I go Derek Harmon from Oregon, the defensive tackle there. He's a big dude. He's 300 plus pounder, but Wags also crazy athletic, ran the 40 and under 5, which is nuts for 310 pounds. I look at his age. He's 21 years old. He won't be 22 until August of this year. Packers love to play that age game where they can. I mean, I look back to Kenny Clark and, we can go probably down the roster and find a lot of guys that are pretty youthful coming out of college that the Packers like. He's a guy who can, plays inside outside in the sense of he can definitely get after the quarterback in the interior, but can also plug the run. Just a violent guy at the line of scrimmage. And I think that a lot of these defenses are looking for different kinds of guys. And I think that Harmon actually fits what the Packers do. So despite the fact that a few are coming off the board already, it is a deep draft. And I might argue that Harmon in a different draft might be one of the first 1 or 2 defensive tackles taken, right? So you just never know year to year how this works out. So if I had to guess right now, I'm going to go Harmon because he's still on the board. It's a position of need, but it's also a guy that I think fits Green Bay exceedingly well.
All right. I like it. Dane, I'm going to stick with my prediction of wide receiver. I put my name on it. So I like Golden or Egbuka. So I think one of those two guys, if they're still there for the Packers at 23, this is finally going to be the year that the Packers take a first round wide receiver. So we'll see what happens. But I'd be very, very happy if Harmon is there for the Packers to take as well.
I'll take any of those 3, to be completely honest, and I think we'd be happy, right? It's different things. So I think Packer Twitter would be a lot happier with the wide receiver, but I just want a good football player. I know you do too. So I think that's the key.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here and look forward to seeing who the Packers take in the next 30 to 45 minutes here. So, as always, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. Be legendary and go Pack
Go Pack Go!
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheeseheads go Pack Go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will